Fueled by Deathcast.
And it leads me to my next line of question is that you're very involved in the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
And the answer seems pretty evident to me after seeing your place. But did being in the Marvel Universe make you a fan of the Marvel Universe culture? Or were you already a fan before you became part of the Marvel Universe?
Oh, long before.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up on a steady diet of Marvel comics. I was a huge collector. You know, even back then, the toys that were made, you know, didn't necessarily connect that much to me. At that time, there was the Mego stuff, which was acceptable to me at the time because that was the only option. The DC stuff, some of it, and a few Marvel characters have been kind of well realized by the Captain Action figure by Ideal. You had Spider-Man, Sergeant Fury, Captain America. I think that was it for the Marvel stuff. One of the greatest toys still in my mind, you know, being able to dress up this figure as all your favorite heroes. I mean, Steve Canyon and Buck Rogers was slightly lost on me because I was born in 1962. Right. So I wasn't of the born in the 50s. It didn't necessarily resonate with me. But I was a huge collector. I and a little bit of I had sort of a savant, you know, knowledge of Marvel. My older brother, he was 6 years older than I was. He was a huge collector. And Marvel changed it all. I mean, I read Superman and Batman when I was a little boy, and very shortly after that, because my brother was older, I read Spider-Man and saw the art of Steve Ditko, and then suddenly it was Kirby and Fantastic Four, and I was consumed. And my father, who was not only a painter, but he was an Ivy League academic, would always kind of grouse at us, you know, you always have your face in those goddamn comic books. They're mindless. And I think he was sort of, his experience had been that, you know, they were like the Sunday funnies. I mean, harmless, but not necessarily intellectually nurturing.
Yeah.
And my brother, in this kind of argument they had at one point, handed my father a bunch of comics, Marvel comics, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and something else. And he said, just read these comics. It'll take you 20 minutes to read these. Just look at them and tell me that they're dumb. And my dad came back and he said, yeah, these are kind of deep.
Yeah.
And he said, and by the way, because my father always sort of, I don't want to say necessarily dismissed it. My mother was an illustrator, so my mother got Kirby and Gil Kane and also was a huge, loved Crazy Cat and Happy Hooligan and the original Tarzan stuff, Prince Valiant, Pogo, Little Nemo. These things were, my mother was enamored with these things because these were all great illustrators.
Yeah.
And my mother was kind of stunned by Kirby. I mean, she used to make sort of jokes. She would say, yeah, the anatomy, sometimes they take huge liberties with the anatomy, but she got it.
Yeah.
And my father, after that, never shit on comics again. And he would sometimes say, I remember one time him saying to someone, I don't know what it was apropos, but he was having a conversation with another adult, and he said, yeah, my kids read the Fantastic Four. Have you ever read any of those comics? It's lofty stuff, and it was.
It is,
and it became. I don't know. You saw guys like, and there was always science that was applied to this, heavy science.
Tons
you know,
of it,
the Hulk and Spider-Man and Steve Rogers and all these characters were affected by science, whether it existed or not. There was nothing stupid about it.
Right.
And then for me, I kind of trailed off as I got into high school. I felt like Marvel kind of dipped a little bit in the late 70s. I felt like I became disenchanted with some of the artwork that I was seeing. I was a real Ditko, Romita, Gil Kane purist when it came to Spider-Man. I think Ross Andru is a great he draws great stuff. And but I felt like the villains got a little goofy.
Yeah,
and
it got a lot
Gwen
campy in a
Stacy's
sense,
clone. And the Jackal and like Mindworm.
The language was weird too.
It got dumb.
Yeah.
It got kind of dumb. But then there was still stuff that I was hot into. I mean, I loved Mike Ploog. You know, Ploog just blew my socks off. I mean, Werewolf by Night to me was, I was like, really, a werewolf comic? How are you going to make a comic about a werewolf? But it was Mike Ploog,
so good.
who I loved all the stuff. He was drawing Man-Thing, and he was doing, you know, Marvel ventured out into the magazines for a while.
Yep.
Deadly Hands of Kung Fu was, and still to this day, I've got all my original issues of Deadly Hands of Kung Fu. The Planet of the Apes series was great.
Yeah.
So good.
I love that they had this original series drawn by Ploog, and then they would recreate the films.
Yep.
It was just, I don't know, Marvel. It was on a different level. I mean, and it was just those guys. It was, you know, Stan Lee.
Yep.
And all of those, and he brought together all these really gifted people, and he created something. And then I kind of, you know, then Marvel was doing a lot of adaptations of movies, comic adaptations in the 70s, and I wasn't, you know, and obviously, you know, you're a teenager, your interest shifts from comics and toys to girls and marijuana and beer, and then in the early 80s, I kind of ventured back, and that was the impetus to do that was somebody dropped The Dark Knight Returns on me.
It's a good one.
And I looked at Frank Miller's writing and the artwork, and I went, oh, what's this?
Yeah.
And then went back to it. And ironically, a lot of the stuff that I had read was still a little goofy. West Coast Avengers and things like that. I couldn't really connect with that.
Right.
I kind of liked the X-Men stuff. And then I ventured back a little bit with the Punisher War Journal series and things like that. And then Romita Jr. came on the scene. I went, well, that makes sense. You know, that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and yet there is nothing about his style that's even bears any resemblance to what his father did.
Right.
And you know, once again, the artwork got better. The stories got really good. The art of Gene Colan also for me, and he was of course drawing stuff in the 60s. The way he drew Daredevil, whenever Gene Colan's work came into play, it was filmic. I mean, I would look at that stuff. I mean, he would draw the trajectory of a punch coming to hit, you know, a bad guy, or he would, you know, when he would draw Daredevil swinging, it had motion to it, and just his panels looked like stills lifted from a film.
Yeah.